Hey everybody, it's Greg here. This is my week 3 project. My project's gonna be on Google Slides that I'll post in the communities page, and I'm recording it just using screen share on Zoom. And I'm gonna try to channel Bergman and Sams and do this in one take. So here we go. Brief overview. My plan is to flip the lecture portion of my American Revolution unit. Right now it's 8th grade, but it's also taught in 6th grade, and I don't quite know exactly where I'll be at next year as far as grade level. So this flipped version of the lecture will enhance the current version in 3 major ways. One, the lecture will be recorded and available to the students to watch at their pace and at any time. It's a lot harder to lose a digital video than it is to lose notes. And I have a lot of experience with kids losing physical notes. The video recording will also provide me with time to talk with my students about note taking and modeling different types of note taking strategies to them. And then finally, flipping the lecture to the students will allow me more time to do student check-ins and perform more differentiation with my students. Really, I think it's going to transform the way I teach by helping me to build deeper relationships with my students. And again, like I said, really help me with the differentiation and making sure all of my students are getting what they need. Oops, here we go. So here's the goal. I'm gonna record the lectures into videos. I'm gonna break it up into two 10-minute or so segments. The first video will cover salutary neglect through the series of taxes imposed by England on the colonies in the 1760s. I was thinking, like the Sugar Act, I could be eating Oreos or something, you got to pay a tax and you make it fun. The second video will be building on that first video, and it'll talk about how these feelings of resentment on both sides led to physical confrontation in the form of like the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, and the Intolerable Acts. And it'll conclude with talking about the First Continental Congress and how that's the first big step towards self-governance for the American colonies. And I'm going to break it into 2 parts because it's going to help me with modeling and feedback. I wrote in here like a breakdown of everything. I'm just going to give you a really brief overview so you can look through the slides in community. What I did is I put everything into a pie chart, which I learned how to do today. So my math teacher would be proud of me. Here's how I break it down. I'm going to spend the first 25% of class, or about 15 minutes if it's a 60-minute class, modeling student note taking. So we're going to start watching the video together as a class, and I will model note taking strategies for them, and they'll see what I'm doing and they'll take notes the way that I'm taking notes. And then what I'll do is we'll stop at about the 15-minute mark, which if we're watching a 10-minute video, 15 minutes isn't enough time because you need to stop and you take notes and rewatch things. And that's what I'm going to stress to them. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes letting them finish the first video and take their own notes, some kind, like an immediate formative assessment of sites. So get some feedback to see what they got from that first 15 minutes and put it immediately into play. And then what we'll do after class is half gone is that we'll talk and we'll do shoulder partner shares. We'll do peer feedback. You'll talk to your shoulder partner. You'll talk about, you'll read each other's notes, kind of discuss what you took, and you'll find one similarity and one difference between your notes. And then we'll parlay that into a class discussion where we'll talk about bigger ideas. We'll identify positive trend lines and we'll identify worrying trend lines, and then figure out ways that we can remedy those worrying trend lines. And then at the end, I was going to have the students do an individual reflection. It was going to be digital of some kind. I'm thinking either a Padlet or Socrative reflection. I don't quite know what apps I'll have access to next year, so I know it'll be digital. And then they'll have an exit ticket. And for me, that's the bell work folder system that I employ in my classroom. Each kid has a actual like manila folder that they keep in my room. It doesn't leave my room. We keep in like notes or any kind of physical papers that we have for each unit so they know what to study. It's a really good organizational tool. But what they do on the way out the door is I have a tray of 5 plastic trays by the door, and they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's my exit ticket. Like they drop the folder in a tray. If they drop it in 5, I know, Jimmy's good to go. And if Johnny drops his folder in the 1 tray, then I know, I need to see the next day at the beginning of class, what's going on with Johnny, where's he getting hung up at, and see if I can help him. So it kind of helps me keep my, finger on the pulse of the classroom. So we talk about creating opportunities for our learners and their personal interests. When I was reading this question, one thing immediately jumped out to me, and that's the work of a Hungarian American psychologist. And his name's right here. I'm going to try it. It is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And he has this idea that he talked about called workflow. It's where increasing difficulty is paired with increasing interest, basically. And you can get into the state of workflow in which you are able to do a tremendous amount of work, or you're really able to learn, and time passes much quicker than you realize. I call it the zone. I play a lot of video games, or at least I used to when I had free time. And I'd get into the zone, and my wife would be like, "Hey, don't forget to do the dishes." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll play this for 30 minutes. I'll do the dishes," and she'll come back 3 hours later, like, "What are you doing? How are you still playing that?" I'm like, "Wait, it's only been 10 minutes." I look at the clock. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So zone. I call it the zone. He called it workflow. And so my question is, can we use workflow, this idea of workflow, in flipped classrooms where we are making our lessons technology driven and entertaining, and using that and increasing difficulty to get our students into a workflow? And can we harness that idea to really get our students to excel and do some great things? And then and I put some more thoughts here on the back side of that slide. The Kuros reflection piece, where it says, how do I see flipped learning helping me in my specific environment? I immediately thought about my seating arrangement. Like, we're talking about the physical layout of my class. It's flipped learning will allow me to do a lot of different things with my seating arrangement. I know because of COVID and my seating chart, my seating arrangement was very much dictated at the beginning of the year about COVID restrictions. But this is generally how my seats look in my class. And this is a picture of my classroom right now. I'll be able to get more creative. I won't have to go with all the forward facing desks facing me or the dry erase board. I could do something like a horseshoe, or we could do station work, where I'll be able to move things around, kind of keep the workspace changing and keep them interested and keep students engaged that way. Plus, it gives me ability to have more proximity to all of my students. The research article that I read was from a sixth grade social studies teacher out of Hawaii. His name is Joshua Winters. He talked about flipped learning and its impact on students. He did a year-long study. He talked about how there are two learning spaces, the individual space and the group space, which I thought was very interesting, the way he talked about how those flow into each other. And so flipped learning really helps you to get the individual space on their time, and you could work on the group space in class where you can really direct that information, and you can really direct the learning as a teacher. I put more thoughts in here that you can read more in depth, but the big takeaway was that the top students did really well with the challenge. The middle students were really empowered to do well, and the low students kind of stayed about the same as the control group. And the idea being, at least to me, that, if that's the case, then I can use that time to really work with my low students and really put that differentiation instruction to work, and really trying to help them get the most out of it. I have my references down here, and that's my project, my presentation. If you guys have any questions or any comments, please leave them on the Google slide in communities. And thank you guys.